you think is best set up for a run to the national championship?
Oh, man. I mean, for a second there, it looked like we weren't going to have all 4 1 seeds in the Sweet 16, or we weren't going to have, I think, fewer than at least 2 1 seeds in the Sweet 16, which has never happened before. Houston playing a little bit wounded there in that game against Auburn in Birmingham, able to have a really gutsy second half. I still think that, I mean, there's no question Alabama's got the easiest path right now. You've got the game. That bracket fell apart a little bit. They're playing a San Diego State team that is gritty but has not had a whole lot of success in the NCAA tournament. I like that matchup for Bama. I don't think that San Diego State can play the way that they want to against the Crimson Tide. And then if you win that, you're playing either a 6-seeded Creighton team or a 15 seed in Princeton in the Elite Eight. They seem to be kind of firing right now. There's some concern over Brandon Miller's health. He didn't score at all in their first game. He looked more healthy in the second round. They don't seem to be affected by some of the off the court stuff that has been going on. I do wonder about as you progress in the tournament, the more questions that are out there, the brighter the light that gets shined on your program, if that's going to have an effect on them at all. They were kind of insulated playing those first 2 games close to home. You'll have more reporters that want to ask different questions moving forward. I think that's the biggest, honestly, I think that's the biggest opponent for Alabama moving forward is kind of that off the court focus and those questions that they're going to have to answer, because on the court, they've been pretty spectacular so far, and they've got a great draw moving forward. I still think if you're saying team to beat, they're the team to beat right now.
Mike, I hope your bracket is looking better than Biden's, along with many Americans. It's not looking so hot. 15 seed. We get it once again. Saw it with St. Peter's, saw it with Oral Roberts. We remember it with Dunk City. Why does this keep happening? And does this mean that we've kind of got a target of 14 or a 15 to win 2 games every year?
I guess. I mean, I'm on here last week with you guys. I'm like, watch out for Vermont. Watch out for Colgate. I'm looking at 15 seeds. I'm not looking at Princeton at all. And they come out and they look terrific against Arizona. And then just beat the absolute what out of Missouri. I mean, they looked like the 2 seed in that 15-7 matchup. They looked like the way that we thought Arizona was going to look in that round. They looked phenomenal. And now, 3 straight years with a 15 seed, not just winning a game, but advancing into the Sweet 16. It never happened before Florida Gulf Coast did it a few years ago. We went 35 years with tournament expansion without seeing one 15 seed win multiple games in this tournament. And now it's happened 3 consecutive seasons. That's become the big question is, why is this happening? I think one of the reasons is you've got players everywhere. You got more people playing the game at a high level. You've got, I think, teaching has improved. I think also coaching has improved. It's really easy to steal somebody's set right now. You can get on YouTube. You can find a great baseline out of bounds play very quickly. I think that's helped. And then also I think you can't gloss over the fact that the best teams in the country now maybe aren't as much of a cohesive unit as they used to be, because you do have so many transfers. You do have, the lack of classes coming in and then playing 3-4 seasons together. And maybe that affects the best teams in college basketball might just not be as strong as they were 10 to 15 years ago, because they are teams that are kind of put together every single season with a mix of transfers and young players, and then a couple of guys here and there that have played 2 or 3 seasons. But it certainly feels like this is a trend that's here to stay. We're going to have more 14 seeds advancing. We're going to have more 15 seeds pulling upsets. And now even, I guess you sprinkle in a 16 seed here and there. But it's great for the first weekend. There's no question, but it is much different than it used to be.
Mike Rutherford of cardchronicle.com with us now. I want to ask you about the 2 West games, but before that, Kansas State and Michigan State. BetMGM just went to 2.5. You've got an interesting coaching matchup with Jerome Tang, his first year with Kansas State against Tom Izzo. What are your initial thoughts here early on this matchup?
It is wild to see Jerome Tang, a first-year guy who takes over a Kansas State team, picked dead last in the Big 12. He's got them in the Sweet 16. He's swaggy about it. He's coming out after the game yesterday and being like, I don't care about Kentucky's tradition. We had dudes. They didn't have dudes. That's why we win the game. He's not going to be intimidated at all. But Tom Izzo, look, nobody does this better than Tom Izzo. And when I say this, I mean being a lower-seeded team in the NCAA tournament, and that's a literal thing. They won as a lower-seeded team under Izzo for the 16th time yesterday, and that's the most upset wins that any coach has had in the history of the NCAA tournament. He's been to the Sweet 16 a ton with 7 seeds. He owns 2 seeds. The last 2 times that he's been to the Sweet 16 as a 7 seed, he's gone on to the Final Four. I like Michigan State in this matchup. They're playing with a lot of confidence. They needed Tyson Walker to really get going, to be kind of their superstar. He's done that. He'll have his hands full against Marquise Noel, who had maybe the best opening weekend of any player in the tournament. 23 total assists, which is outrageous. He assisted or scored on 62% of his team's points, which I think only Ja Morant and Jimmer Fredette have done through the first weekend since 2010. He is spectacular. If you haven't seen Marquise Noel play, he's 5'9". He makes dazzling passes. He's got unlimited range. He almost single-handedly willed them to that win over Kentucky. It's going to be a fun matchup. I think you have to go with the experience in Tom Izzo and a Michigan State team that's playing with a whole lot of confidence right now, but nothing would shock me there.
These West matchups for the Sweet 16 round on Thursday are phenomenal. I was making the case that you could say that the best game and maybe the 2 best games of Thursday and Friday are both sitting here in the West. You've got the 2-3 UCLA Gonzaga, and then the 4-8 matchup UConn and Arkansas. Anything stand out? Immediate thoughts on both these games?
Yeah, I think I told you guys last week. I think there were 6 or 7 teams in the West that I would have picked to win the East. The East was so weak to me, and the West is so strong. And I think you're seeing that now come to fruition. I mean, Arkansas, Kansas in another region could have easily prevailed. Arkansas's got 2 guys that are going to be lottery picks. They've got Devo Davis, who's a tremendous college player, and they were able to win that game. They could definitely beat Connecticut. But UConn, to me, I think Alabama's the team to beat. I had UConn winning the national title coming into the tournament. They've looked like a top-tier national contender through the first 2 games. They came out a little sleepy against St. Mary's yesterday, woke up and dominated that second half. They're playing tremendously. And then that UCLA-Gonzaga matchup, I love that it's happening 17 years to the day that we had the Adam Morrison game back there in 2006, which is kind of a crazy thing. But I think UCLA on paper is the superior team. They played really well the first weekend, but they've also got a banged-up big man in Bona. That opens the door for Drew Timme to go off for like 35 and 20, which he's fully capable of doing. They're going to have to find a way to slow Timme down because he's the engine that makes Gonzaga go. He willed them to victory in the second half last night against TCU. But yeah, those 2 matchups, if you're trying to highlight a region that has the 2 best back-to-back games, there's no question it's the West. And I think whoever comes out of there has a very, very real shot to win 2 more games and win a national title.
Love it. Yeah, cannot wait for those games. I want to go back to the East. FAU, Tennessee. FAU, a really balanced team offensively, defensively, just outside the top 30 in both. Meanwhile, Tennessee did beat FAU back in December by 19 points. What do you like in this matchup?
I like the fact that you've got contrasting styles here. I mean, Dusty May, the Florida Atlantic coach, comes out kind of setting the tone already after their win over Fairleigh Dickinson, and is like, we're going to go watch some rugby videos to get ready for this Tennessee team. And Tennessee fans are already upset about that. They're like, he's trying to get foul calls. He doesn't. But this is Tennessee's MO. I mean, they come out against Duke. They hold them to 52 points, which is the lowest point total Duke's ever had in an NCAA tournament game. And afterwards, they're like, we knew we were going to take them into the mud with us. We knew we were going to drag them down. We're going to slop it up. We're going to be physical with you. We're going to play a man's game. And if you're not ready for it, then you're not ready for it. And that's what they're going to take. I mean, FAU, as well as they played these first 2 games, they haven't faced anybody that has the physicality of Tennessee since they played Tennessee in the regular season. I think that's going to be a big adjustment for them. They did get a little bit out of control against Fairleigh Dickinson. They let the Knights kind of dictate the pace a little bit to start that second half, and it got them out of whack. But they're going to play up tempo. They're going to try to score a lot of points. If they can get their offense going and force Tennessee to play from behind, I think they have a chance to win that game, because Tennessee, as good as they looked in the game against Louisiana and as good as they looked in the game against Duke, they still have significant issues on the offensive end. If you can come out hot and get ahead by, 10, 12, they may not be able to find the offense to get back in that game. I think that's the recipe for success. But if they get you down and you let them play that style, they will muck it up and they will keep you down. So I think Tennessee's got a very good chance to win and advance, and they need to, because if they don't, that Knoxville fan base is going to be all over Rick Barnes just yet again.
Always the upsets. Fairleigh Dickinson 25-1 to win on the money line in the first round. Of course, we've got the Princeton story we already talked about, but the other big angle was unders. And at one point this weekend, they were 30-10. And the reason was obvious, because teams are not hitting their threes. If you look historically, this is the worst shooting first couple of rounds of the tournament we've ever seen. Just watching all year, does it surprise you that the shooting from outside was so bad? And why do you think we're here?
It did. I mean, I saw collectively the tournament was like a team shot 30.1% or something from three, which is abnormally low. And it doesn't make a whole lot of success, because shooting numbers across the board have been up recently. I know my dad played college basketball. He's got the old man sayings, and he's always like, we used to make every free throw. And I'm like, Dad, the highest free throw percentages in the history of college basketball have all been made over the last 5 years. Teams are practicing more free throws. They're shooting better. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the 3-point percentages to just fall off a cliff in the NCAA tournament. I can't give you an answer. I don't know. You had rim issues in Greensboro where they're hammering the rim before both games. I know some Kentucky fans were upset about that, but those two teams come out in K-State and UK, and I think we're like 4 of 39 from three, which is just atrocious at the beginning of that game. I can't explain it. I don't know if teams weren't used to the sight lines of the bigger arenas. I'm curious to see if it figures itself out this weekend, because if the numbers remain low, then I think it becomes a question, because some of the teams that shot these low percentages, they were not terrible three-point shooting teams during the regular season. So I can't give you an answer. Maybe it's just a total statistical outlier, but it was definitely one of the stories of this first weekend.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make sense of Purdue's lack of success in the tournament? I mean, once again, on the wrong side of history, and Zach Edey at the star player. I mean, it can't, I'd like your opinion, but I'm thinking it can't help him when he's thinking about maybe going to the NBA and then they're out losing to a 16 seed. What's your overall assessment at how you rate Purdue?
Yeah, I guess if you're Purdue, you're saying it's not just us, it's the entire conference, which makes you feel a little bit better, I suppose. But the Big Ten has been a disaster in the last 4 NCAA tournaments. I think they've only sent 4 teams to the Sweet 16 the last 3 years, which is, I mean, what we've been told about the conference, which has been that it's been the strongest or the second strongest in each of these 3 seasons. They keep falling flat on their face. And it's not just that they lose. You've got teams that are getting hammered, that are just that look woefully inept. Purdue in that game against FAU, against Fairleigh Dickinson, they told you what they were going to do. They were going to drop everybody in on Zach Edey. They were going to dare anybody else on that roster to beat them, and nobody could. Purdue couldn't make an outside shot to save their life, because Fairleigh Dickinson was essentially sending 4 guys to collapse on Edey. I think he attempted 1 shot over the final 9:35 of that game. They weren't going.
Yeah.
You know that a 7'4" dude against the smallest team in college basketball is going to get his to an extent, but they weren't going to let him go off for like 50 and 30. And they were like, if anybody else can beat us, that's fine. Nobody else could. Purdue's issue all season long was they had young guards that didn't really play well when they got to the brightest stage. And that's exactly what happened in this game. All of their guards looked like below average college guards. Edey did his thing. They were a flawed team. I didn't think they'd lose to a 16 seed, but they've been a flawed team, I think, this entire season, which is the case for a lot of teams in the Big Ten. I think you need – I saw a lot of Indiana fans saying last night, we need more rosters like Miami's. We need – we need more guards out there. We can't play this archaic style of basketball. It's getting us killed in the NCAA tournament, and maybe there's something to that. I don't know.